Congratulations to you both on your nominations, and General Robinson to your landmark nomination. I hope that we'll see speedy confirmation of you both. General Scaparrotti, I want to return to a question that a few of the senators have addressed about Russian aircraft flying by first one of our ships and then one of our aircraft in northern Europe. I know that you're not aware of all the circumstances to specify a response, but does activity like that call for some kind of a response?
Yes, sir, it does. It endangers our crew members, our ships, and does require a response of some type.
And is that because with no response it emboldens Putin's Russia to probe even further?
I think they need to understand what's acceptable. We're flying and sailing in international waters in the Baltic, for instance, and we have every right to do so.
Need that response be symmetrical? Must we fly by one of their ships or one of their aircraft, or could it be asymmetrical? For instance, Javelin showing up on the border of Ukraine and Russia.
I would just say that as we look at, at options, we should keep everything on the table.
And that whatever the response may be, even if it's not a public response, Vladimir Putin needs to understand it is a response.
Yes.
I want to turn to a topic we've discussed previously in your current role in Korea, cluster munitions, and the coming ban on cluster munitions that have a dud rate below 1%. What is your understanding of how many cluster munitions in the inventory today fail to comply with that Gates policy?
Sir, I couldn't answer that accurately. I would just tell you my experience with the munitions that I have in Korea, that I would lose just about all of my cluster munitions for use that I have stockpiled today.
What is the Department of Defense's current policy or plan to address this problem?
Today, there are studies ongoing and some assets available that in the future with programs of purchase that could begin to replace those. Some of those munitions don't have the same lethality as those that we have today, particularly against armor. And presently, for those that are not just that are not envisioned, but are actually assets munitions we know we could build, we don't have a plan that replaces them in the numbers that we need. And I would say that's true in Korea because I'm very aware of what our requirements are.
Is one of those possible solutions airbursting traditional so-called dumb bombs and using them as area targets?
That's an option.
And would that be an option that lacks the kind of lethality against armor and artillery to which you?
If you were to use, if you were to use unitary munitions to replace a cluster munition, you have to fire 3 to 5 munitions in place of 1. And so just logistically, it creates a problem as well. We need to develop effective cluster munitions that meet the law, and my recommendation would be that in the interim, we retain the cluster munitions that we have today.
Are you aware of any U.S.-produced solution to this problem?
I'd like to take that for the record. I'm aware of some solutions we're working. When you say it's U.S.-produced, I'm not exactly sure, who is working on those products that I'm aware of, and it's probably best that I take that so I can also answer it in a classified form as well.
Thank you. This is obviously of most famous concern on the border between North Korea and South Korea, right. Given Russia's recent probing throughout Eastern Europe and the Middle East. How important is this issue for you in the new job after confirmation?
It's very important. I would point out that that Russia has used cluster munitions in the Ukraine themselves with great effect.
I thought so. Vladimir Putin and many other analysts in Russia often cite historical grievances for their activity in places like the Ukraine and to bolster themselves domestically. They cite 3 grievances in particular. The collapse of the Warsaw Pact, the collapse and disintegration of the Soviet Union, and then NATO expansion into those historically Russian-dominated territories. Do you think that that is a fair account for what's happened in the post-Cold War era?
Well, sir, if I'm following you, I would just say I think it's clear that Putin, I believe, I can't say it's clear, I believe that Putin's view is that that Russia is being constrained by the international norms established by the West and predominantly the U.S. And it's from that view that he has, I think, set out deliberately to challenge those norms, to disrupt our international order globally, wherever he has that opportunity.
And given that countries like Poland and Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia have all chosen freely to join NATO, do you think there's any truth to his claims that these are lands that are traditionally oriented towards the east?
Well, he certainly claims that, but as you know, we believe, and many of these countries desire, to be a sovereign nation and make their own choices, the type of government they have, and that's what we've traditionally supported as a part of our values and we're in support of today.
And the final claim he makes about NATO expansion is that this is an aggressive action towards Russia and could threaten their territorial integrity and sovereignty. Has NATO been investing lately in large-scale rearmaments of the kind that would launch a massive land invasion of Russia?
No, sir, and as you know, NATO for nearly 20 years reached out to Russia with the idea that they could become a part of the security that NATO provides to all of Europe as a partner. And they've refused that hand at this point.
And to look at this claim from the other direction, has Russia been investing in massive defensive buildup, say building tank ditches on its border with NATO or moving in other kinds of massive defensive weaponry to forestall this supposed NATO invasion of Russia?
Their modernization of their forces is significant. It's developing a credible capability that we've seen them display, and with their first out-of-area deployment into Syria, for instance, and the weapon systems they deployed there. And then finally, if you look at the area access or denial, those areas are A2AD that they've established. I think there's ample evidence of that.
Yeah, I think based on the historical record as well as their own investments, it suggests to me that Vladimir Putin's narrative about the West is maybe another classic Russian campaign of disinformatia. Thank you.